afternoon, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Holly Gipson, Senior Product Specialist here at UDA Technologies, joined by my colleague Jordan Davis, also Product Specialist here at UDA.
Hey everyone, good afternoon, and thanks for joining us on your lunch hour or early morning, or in some cases, late in the evening, wherever you are in the world today.
We're so excited to have you with us, and we really have a lot of a great workshop really planned for you guys today. We'll be focusing on using notes and cost codes in time tracking. So we'll have a chance to jump into the Construction Online time tracking tool, really show you how that's set up, what you can do from an administrator standpoint, and what your team will be able to do in terms of clocking in and out and capturing information for what your team is up to, as well as take a look at some of the new features that we've introduced recently for time tracking, including things like adding notes, adding cost codes, adding photographs. So we have a really great session planned for you guys today. Now, Jordan and I are also joined by our colleague, Sydney Dorsey. As always, Sydney will be manning the keyboards and addressing questions as they come up throughout the session.
Welcome everyone. For those of you who don't know too much about UDA Technologies but who are interested in what we are showing off today in our time tracking tools, we are a construction project management software development company. We make tools for construction professionals that are now serving over 650,000 users in over 80 countries in the world. But what every single client of ours has as a common challenge is time management, really labor management, keeping track of the time that your employees spend working on projects and really making sure that the time that they're spending is efficient. We developed a very, very powerful suite of tools that function both in the web browser for administrators and also on the mobile app to make tracking time easier than you have ever seen before in any type of system. We really think that the tools we're bringing to the table are cutting edge and really have a lot of the challenges that you experience on a daily basis covered.
Yeah, absolutely. And Construction Online at this point is used by so many people to manage so many different types of projects. I know, kind of at last count, definitely, kind of looking at that 700,000 users jumping in and using it. We see people using it for all different types of jobs, large jobs, smaller jobs, kind of all over the place. So one of the things that you'll see with time tracking here is it's really flexible enough to accommodate those different types of scenarios and situations. It's one reason why we so much love feedback that we get from you guys to know what you're most interested in using and how you're using tools like time tracking day to day. But, to jump into time tracking now, I thought it would be really great for us to start with just a quick overview of what you can do in Construction Online time tracking, kind of overall from an administrative standpoint. So, time tracking was released as part of Construction Online 2020. So I know that many of you are already using this on a daily basis with either yourself or your team and taking advantage of some of these tools. But just to kind of go through some of the things that are available to you here, we'll take a look at Construction Online, the web view, and we'll also take a look at the mobile app. So we'll be switching back and forth between those. But I thought it would be great to start with Construction Online, really from this administrator perspective. So when you log in, you're going to have several options in terms of being able to view the information. Now you'll notice that on my screen we have a couple of different things going on. The first thing is that I can see that I'm clocked in. So we have, a place to see where an employee, whether that's, myself as the administrator or whoever logs in, everyone has the ability to just see if they're clocked in or not and be able to go ahead and clock in or enter notes or change between projects or whatever you need to do from a time tracking standpoint. So we can see here that I am clocked in, but I can also see that I've got several colleagues who are clocked in as well.
Yeah, so what we're looking at in the on the clock section is a real-time dashboard of any of your team who is currently clocked in to a project or to general administrative hours. You'll notice that in addition to tracking time for different projects, we can also see the time that the person clocked in, as well as a tiny location pin. If we wanted to make sure that the employee in question or that the person in question actually was where they said they were when they clocked in, it's really simple to have a quick check. We can either look at a map of the different locations, or if we wanted to see an individual employee's clocked in location all we'd have to do is click the pin next to the time when they clocked in. Now, this information is going to be logged into Construction Online. Ideally, you don't have to deal with this situation where you're suspecting that a team member is clocking in from a place where they shouldn't be, maybe at the Hardee's down the road and they're a few minutes late to the job site or something like that. But it doesn't really matter in an ideal scenario because you can check in either case. Now, what we can see on the map, of course, are different clock-in locations. Most of us are clocking in here at the UDA Technologies office, which is why you can see most of our pins are right next to the office building, but we can also see clock-in locations from pretty much anywhere in the world. We're tying into a very robust map system that overlays the information in practical real time to the map whenever someone has clocked in or clocked out of the system.
Yeah, that's right. So, of course, what this map shows us the location of everyone who is currently clocked in. So we're able to see where they were when they clocked in, so that we can just see who's on the clock. Now, if we want to take that a step further and maybe see a map view of all of the clock ins and clock outs for our company or for an individual person, you do have the ability to do that as well. So your time tracking map here on this tab is really going to show you that information. So now we're starting to see not just who's currently clocked in and where they were, but all the people who have clocked in and out over the last time period. So mine is showing this month, but if maybe I want to just look at my current pay period or something like that, we can set that up here, and you'll notice that it actually, if you've got too many clocking in and out in the same location, it groups them together for you. So I can see, we've had 43 in this area here, 36 here, and then as you continue drilling in, you can actually look at those individual clock ins, clock out. So I can see Jordan clocked out at 4:44 p.m. Maybe he worked a little bit late that day. I could see maybe other employees or myself. Now, any filters that you apply here are going to apply to the map as well. So if we kind of go back out, maybe I want to look at like kind of a larger area. We have work perhaps all over the state or the region, so we might see time punches or clock ins and outs happening all over the place. You can, of course, go ahead and not only zoom in on the map, but also filter down what you're looking at here. So if I wanted to just look at myself, I could apply that filter. Or maybe I want to look at my colleague Jim and see what his clock ins look like. And then I can actually just click on any of these as well and, kind of go to the map again right there. So a ton of things that you can do with the map, including, all of the filtering options, as well as just visually seeing the information. And it also helps you to be able to spot outliers. Sometimes if you have an employee that should be at a specific site, perhaps every single day, and you notice that you have 36 here, but 7 somewhere else, it may be nothing, and it may be something that you want to turn your attention to, but it's nice just to be able to have that information and be able to quickly scan and see, if there's anything out of the ordinary.
Yeah, and the quick scan and overview perspective doesn't just apply to the location for the actual time tracked in Construction Online. If you switch back over to the time summary view as well, you have a very easy way to review all of the timesheets for specific individuals directly in the dashboard. So there's not too much of a need to actually go through and generate a report every single time you want to see how many hours someone has worked for the last pay period. There's a lot of dynamic filtering and scoping tools built directly into the time tracking table. So right now we're looking at roughly a 2-month time period, but if we really needed to, we could switch to see our current pay period to get an idea of where we were at or where we're headed or trending towards for this pay period. We can review all of the time that was logged from the last pay period. We can look at it from a 30-day perspective. It's a very flexible tool, and it really fits into the pay periods for your company.
It does. Now, of course, there's some great reports that we'll take a look at later on in the session today, but one thing that I really love about this page is that it's got that on-page reporting capability. So you'll notice here that I've included a couple of filters. So we're showing all employees, but I have now chosen to look at just a specific project, my 2272 Hamilton project for the last 30 days. And I can see how much each individual person has spent on this job. And I can also see that we've logged a total of 27 hours for this project over the last 30-day period. Of course, you can do the opposite. You can look at what an individual person has done. But that's one of the things that really sets Construction Online apart, is being able to look at it, from a project standpoint, not just a person standpoint. So I personally really love, this particular filter. Now, of course, really often, a lot of the clocking in and clocking out that is happening is going to be happening on a mobile device. So we want to maybe jump over and just take a look at that. Jordan, I know you work with a lot of customers who are already using the time tracking really regularly. How frequently are they clocking in on the phone versus on their regular Construction Online account?
It's a really great question, and I think that the answer is going to be obvious to everybody attending today. I really think that the primary clock-in functionality is going to come directly from the mobile app. We have listened to a ridiculous amount of client feedback, really trying to hone in on what's necessary for a great time tracking app, what's necessary for a great time tracking experience, and almost in every single conversation, it boils down to keeping the mobile app easy enough to use on site to make sure that your employees are actually tracking their time efficiently, effectively, and for the right projects. We understand what it takes to build a fantastic project management mobile app, and it really distills down into a few elements. It needs to be simple, it needs to be quick, it needs to be understandable. And what we're looking at right here is born exactly from those requirements and those demands, really.
Right. So the first thing you'll notice, and that's one of the reasons why you'll sort of start to see that giant green button that just says clock in, or a big red button that says clock out. So we want to make it as easy to use as possible and make those options as clear as they can possibly be in terms of what the person needs to do. So in this case, I'm already clocked in. So I can see which project I'm clocked into, my 2272 Hamilton project, just like we were seeing on the other view there in Construction Online. So these are, of course, synced up in real time. You're always going to be looking at the same information down to the second, whether you're in Construction Online or on the mobile app. It's all, synced up automatically. So there's nothing special that you have to do there. I have clocked into a cost code, so I'm a project manager on this job. That's how I'm coding my time here. Now, a couple of the new things that we wanted to cover today are the ability to add notes and photos to your time clock entries, both on the app as well as in Construction Online. But we'll start with the app, since that's where we know so many of you and your team members are going to be actually clocking in and out. So here I've clocked in, my project is selected, my cost code is selected. Now we may want to add a note about what I'm working on. So let's say I'm working on meeting on site with the clients or something like that. Could be that I was putting together the estimate, could be that I was doing other administrative tasks. It really doesn't matter. This is just a quick note to say, hey, here's what I've done. You can also go ahead and add some photographs. So if I want to take a quick picture, especially for some of you guys, in the field, you may want to take a couple of quick photographs just to document what you've done. So we can do that right from our time tracking app. I can see that picture is uploading. And that will now become a part of my timesheet for today. Now, a couple of things to note here. One is that as I'm working, so I'm clocked into this project, chances are I may do more than one thing while I'm clocked in. So one really nice thing here is as I continue working throughout that particular shift or that part of my day, if I want to add to my notes, you can come back and just continue adding to these, as you go along. So here we have more notes. And maybe your employees will be more descriptive there. And then if we need to come back and do it again, you can just really keep coming back into those notes, adding to that list until you're ready to clock out. One other thing to note is that if I need to change, if I realize that maybe I clocked into the wrong project or I clocked into general and should have selected a job, you can come back and make any edits or changes. Before you save this timesheet, any changes that you make will just go ahead and update it in real time. So we can see now that I have a picture, I have some notes, I have my cost code, and at this point, if I need to take a lunch or go ahead and clock out for the day, you can just make any of those selections. I've chosen to clock out. So now we can see, here's kind of what it looks like when you're starting fresh, you've got that clock in option. Now I can see really clearly that I have clocked out. And if we look back at our construction online account, we'll see, the same thing. So that information again is updating in real time with that mobile app. Now, one of the things, so with the brand new option to add in the notes and add in the photographs, kind of a common question or thing that you may be wondering is, okay, so then where are those going to show up? So what am I going to be able to see there? So as we come back to Construction Online within your main account here, you'll notice that if we go into any of these timesheets, so I can look at today, Wednesday, November 20th, I can see that I clocked in right before today's meeting at 11:54. I clocked out at 12:17. We've got the map indicator, so that location was captured. And then I can also see that there are notes as well as photographs associated with this timesheet entry. So I can come in and as I want to look at more details here, I can see the notes that person entered. Any photographs that were taken are going to show up again just right here. So you've got all of that information in one place, easily accessible, so you're able to really see, when you're doing your reporting, you're able to go back and look at those notes very easily there.
Now, you might notice there's a new section here as well titled Admin Notes. Now, the typical employee is not going to have access to administrator notes inside of Construction Online. This field is very useful in case an administrator needs to make an adjustment or needs to note some type of change that needed to occur to the timesheet or the clock in. We could go back and look at the employee notes and notice, well, maybe they cut off some information here that was pretty important for this time tracked for the day. With this, you can either note an adjustment that was made to the specific time recorded. Perhaps they forgot to clock into a specific cost code, or they started a little late and they sent you a message and said, hey, I really meant to clock in at 12. Sorry, I clocked in a bit early. So we might want to make an adjustment. Or maybe they forgot to actually clock in earlier and they caught themselves an hour and a half into their shift. Mm-hmm. The administrator notes gives you the flexibility to jot down why an adjustment was made to a specific time entry versus grasping at straws trying to find out, well, hold on a second, why did this change? I thought that we had a different total hours logged for this project earlier in the week. It really does give you the flexibility to go in and make administrative changes specifically. And you'll notice there's a new indicator icon that will show up next to the notes field if there are administrator notes and employee notes, just to give you a quick reference point so you're not wondering, oh, well, there are notes here, but where are they? I don't see them anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So we want you to be able to scan and see that information really easily. That is a common question is, can I make, as an administrator, those adjustments to the timesheet? And you saw when I was editing there that you definitely can adjust the time. You can adjust the project or cost code that this is coded to, be able to view notes, add in additional things here. So you really have a lot of control and a lot of information that you can note and work with here on the timesheet. And of course, this information is going to be exported out when you do some of the reporting or exports of those timesheets here. So you've got just some great scannable information there.
Oh, and do note, the only users who can make changes to timesheet entries are Construction Online administrators. So don't be concerned. Your employees won't have access to everybody's timesheets. They're not going to see all of that information. The only person's information they would see is their own, just for review purposes, and they are not allowed to edit the information. At that point, any types of changes that would need to be made is completely controlled from the administrator standpoint.
Definitely. And the other thing from an administrator standpoint that's just handy to know is that you can kind of come in and clock someone out. So if someone's on the clock and they forgot to clock out, you do have a really quick way of being able to just hit that clock out button for that employee, and that will go ahead and end their shift. So hopefully too many people aren't forgetting to do their clock ins and outs, but I think most of your teams are made up of humans, not robots. So people will forget, and when they do, you've got some easy ways to actually address that. Mm-hmm. Now, a couple of other things that are some are new options, and some are things that have been here a while. But we do want to take a look at some of the settings, because with those new note options and with the new photo options and cost coding options, one of the things that you can now do is set some requirements. So we know that for some of you guys, you may want to really keep it as simple as possible. So we want them to clock out at the clock in at the beginning of the day. We want to clock out at the end of the day. Don't really need anything else. That would be a great improvement over maybe the paper timesheets that are being turned in. Or not getting timesheets turned in. So, we might want to keep it simple. For some of you, you may really want to have a way to depend on some notes coming in from your employees, maybe set some parameters in terms of breaks and lunches and length of time for things like that. So you do have some administrator options here. So just to highlight some of the new options, you do now have an employee timesheet requirement option in your administrator drop down menu here, which will allow you to choose must employees enter notes before changing projects or clocking out, or employees must choose a cost code. So this will just allow you to effectively make those requirements before that timesheet can be saved. So anytime we clock out for the day or switch to a new project, that's saving the previous timesheet and committing that to your table here, to your chart here. So this just is a way for you to say, before we can do that, I want to make sure that we have a cost code, or I want to make sure that there are notes entered, or that you can certainly bypass that and not make that a requirement and, kind of keep it simple. So you've got the option to do for your team, what you think is going to work best. So to give you guys just an idea of what that looks like from the phone perspective, if I go ahead and clock in, of course, I always need to select a project. So I can either choose a project that I'm working on, or I can choose to just clock in to general time. We've had some questions come in about some of the geofencing or geo-tracking. One of the things that has been recently added to that will soon to be available on your app here is nearby projects. Now this is pulling off of the project address, so that has to be entered, but it will pull a list of projects that you're close to if you've got that location tracking turned on, so you'll be able to make those selections easily. We'll go ahead and go into 2272 Hamilton, number 201. So we're clocked in, and now let's say that 10 seconds later or 8 seconds later, I want to clock out. Well, because we have those requirements set up, if I go ahead and choose clock out, you'll notice that I'm getting a message now that's letting me know, hey, you must choose a cost code. You can't clock out until you've logged that. So we'll go ahead and choose a cost code here. So we'll just go ahead and select maintenance equipment. And now we're ready to go. Only I also didn't enter my notes, so now it's going to prompt me, okay, you actually also need to enter those notes before you're able to clock out. So if you want to be able to depend on the notes to get you some information about what people are working on throughout the day, you can just make that a requirement. That way the app is going to remind them every time they try to clock out that notes must be entered.
And this is helpful not just from the standpoint of forcing people to enter notes. It's also a great catch for people who might be moving a little too quickly because they have a lot of projects on their plate, or they have a lot of responsibilities on their plate. It is admittedly sometimes easy to forget to put in a quick note on your shift, but with this setting here, not only are you making sure that your information is coming back into the office from an administrative standpoint, you're also helping your team to remind them that, oh, hey, you didn't put a note in for this shift. You might want to make sure that you do that. We don't have to assume in every case that people are trying to do just the least amount of work possible, although you might be able to make that assumption. In some cases, they might just be in a hurry. And this is a great catch to remind them, oh, you forgot to put a note in.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I think that's actually the more common scenario. People are in a hurry. People, just need a quick little nudge or reminder. And so this is a great way to give them that. Now, there are, of course, some other settings that you'll be able to apply for your team as well. Your break settings allow you to set designated time frames for breaks and lunches. So to kind of say, Our lunches are typically 30 minutes or 60 minutes. And when you have this setting active in your account, when someone clocks out to take their lunch, it will actually start a countdown for them. So it'll start counting down from 60 minutes or counting down from 15 minutes. So it's just, a great way for them to be able to visually see how much more time they have left. You can also adjust whether those breaks and lunches are going to be paid or unpaid. For most companies, breaks are paid and lunches are unpaid, but we know that there are really all sorts of requirements. One of the fun things that we've learned in working on this project are some interesting information about rules and labor laws and things like that in different countries. So we've got people all over the place using Construction Online, and so those requirements vary from location to location, country to country, state to state. So we want to set that up to be flexible for all of you. And then you also have some pay period and overtime settings. So this is something you definitely are going to want to set up, because this helps the system to understand how your payroll works really. Are we looking at a 2-week pay period, a 1 week, once a month? And no matter which selection you make, like when does that start? Just because it's a monthly pay period doesn't always mean it's going to run from the first of the month to the end. Sometimes it's middle to middle. So you can really, again, define what that looks like for your company.
And the same is true for overtime tracking as well. You'll notice inside of the table below that in addition to the total hours worked, there's also a separate section for tracking overtime. Now, just like the tracking for the pay periods and break and lunch settings, we also have added a lot of flexibility into the system for accounting for overtime hours as well. It might not be set to your specific overtime calculations right out of the box, but it takes 2 seconds to make the adjustment, and from that point on, you can let the information flow in to then be passed directly across to those responsible for handling that information in your company.
Yeah, that's right. So we've got some great options. Of course, you can see this when you log in as an administrator here. I can see that we look good on overtime. My colleague Jim here has, it looks like a little over 2 hours of overtime for this time frame that I've pulled. So you're able to see that quickly. Really the next step might be to actually get this over to someone else. So maybe we need to hand this to our accountant for payroll purposes or export it out. You've got some great options for that, whether we're wanting to do just a PDF report or if we need to export this out to Excel, maybe to give you a chart to work off of, or for importing, into other systems. So we'll take a look at some of your options there within your time tracking reports. You can generate summaries either for an employee or for a project, so you're able to jump in and do that, as well as export that to Excel there.
Yeah, the first report here is a project time summary report. We found that this is a very useful report for senior staff members or for project managers to get a sense of how much time that they've actually spent working on a project from an administrative standpoint. We know that controlling labor costs on projects is critical to make sure that you're maintaining your budget and really staying profitable on a job. But this gives you a really great breakdown of exactly where the time is going, what is the time being spent on, who's spending the time, and are they really making the best use of the time on their projects.
Right, so in this example here, we've pulled a report for this particular job. Looks like a last 30-day period, and we can look on a daily basis. You can see, first of all, a very quick summary, just how much time has been charged to this particular job, and then the report is also going to give you the breakdown of that. Now the next report, and you've got the option just right next to that one, is your employee time summary. So when you're going through and creating either of these, you're going to either choose the employee or project. You're going to choose the date range that we want to work with. So you could do current pay period is going to be most common, but if you want to do the whole year or the last month, that's going to be up to you. And as we go back and take a look at that report, it's going to look very similar, except that here we're really drilled down to a specific person. So I can see for myself, when I look at this time period, what does that look like? I've charged it to these particular projects. And it may be, as we're kind of looking at mine here, one thing I don't see is cost codes. So you may pull a report like this, look and think, maybe let me go back and require those cost codes, because it would be really nice to have that information here. So that kind of is how you can, start to use some of those tools together. As you pull the report, you might decide you want a little more info, and you can start requiring that. Now, of course, the other option is to export out to Excel. Just like with the reports, you've got an option to pull a date range, and you can also choose to show a detailed timesheet or a summary. Now, a detail is going to show every single entry, time in, time out, whereas the summary is really going to group that information and summarize for us more so on a sort of a day-to-day basis for those employees. So you can see here for Holly, I can see each day a summary of my general hours charged to a project, what that looks like from a total standpoint, and how much of that would be overtime.
Yeah, this type of Excel output is very useful for taking the information and then inputting into some type of payroll or accounting software as well. Now, of course, we have some big plans for this coming ahead in the future, but we wanted to make sure while we continue to work behind the scenes and work behind the curtains that you had an easy way to take this information and do with it what you need to do, which is either reviewing it or putting it into some other type of system for things like cutting paychecks.
Yeah, exactly. So, oops, I showed the wrong screen there for a moment. Yeah, that's right. The Excel export, it gives you the flexibility to be able to do that. And so that's kind of a common question. In fact, looking at some of the questions you guys have submitted as we've gone through. So we'll take a moment now just to circle back to some of those and make sure we're able to get some of those answered before we wrap up today. And that's definitely one of the questions that we have received over the last couple of weeks since time tracking has really been available for our clients, and so many of you have started using it. That's been a common question is, can this export or sync with QuickBooks? So right now, time tracking does have this export. So really that's what we kind of look at from an accounting standpoint, is being able to export your timesheets out, get that information, and then depending on the system that you use, you may be able to just go ahead and import that information in. Now we of course offer some of the best QuickBooks integration in the world when you're looking at the track record that we have, with estimates and change orders and things like that. So time tracking will be no different. That's definitely on the roadmap as a next step for time tracking here would be to allow some integration there with your QuickBooks. That's a longer answer, but the short answer is not yet, but you do have some great options with that Excel export. Let's see, it looks like too we had a question just about whether or not employees can change the GPS settings on the mobile app or turn that off. Just like any other app, just like any other app that is going to use location settings, the user does have the ability to choose to accept that or not. Now, of course, if you're concerned that they might turn it off and we don't want them to do that, as the employer, you can definitely say, hey, this is required. So if you want this to count, we're going to need to be able to see those GPS stamps. That's usually the best way to handle it. From a mobile app standpoint, most of the app stores, so when you look at Android and Apple, are pretty strict. They do need to give their users the ability to control their own access to location settings. So it's usually a security question from the app standpoint. If we're going to get those apps approved and available for you guys, then we do have to kind of allow that functionality there. But that is something they can do, but usually an easy requirement that you can make on your side.
Yeah, if your company owns the mobile devices, they shouldn't be able to change the settings because you technically own the property. Mm-hmm. If it is the person's mobile phone, then it is a question of privacy, and we don't really want to wade into that territory, so we're not going to track without people's permission at all, period. So if you want to turn the location settings off, if your company doesn't need that information, it's pretty easy to do. Just turn the permissions off for the app. Otherwise, if you're concerned more about actually tracking the GPS settings, well, you have two options, like Holly was saying. The first one would be to say, well, if you want the time tracking information to be logged and considered, then, well, turn the GPS settings on. Or if your company owns the phone and you're letting your employees use the devices, turn it on. There's an easy way from an administrator standpoint to adjust settings for the device. take a look into that option.
Yeah, that's right. And the great thing too is that it's also visual for you within Construction Online, that if you were concerned about, someone turning off the GPS settings, you'd be able to see that very quickly. I mean, you either will be seeing these pins here as well as, within your timesheets here. So just a quick scan, you'll be able to see either you've got that information or not. So it would be something, very easy for you to keep that visibility on and be able to, again, remind those employees they needed to do that.
Yeah, we're going to have to have a conversation with Jim here and see what he's doing.
What's going on, right? So let's see. It looks like, and we've got several great questions coming in. It looks like we have time to answer just a couple more. So if there are any that you want to sneak in there before we wrap up today's session. But we did have a great question also kind of related to the location is there or will there be in the future geofencing capabilities? And so that also is, short answer is yes, those capabilities will be there. And that's actually something that you're starting to see built into the app now. So really the next step on the GPS or location front will be kind of what we saw a preview of in the app today, of being able to display for you a list of close projects and kind of allow some definition as to what close means, for your company, but be able to present your employees with a list of projects that they're closest to from a location standpoint. There's also the kind of next step after that will be releasing a feature which will allow you to turn geofencing on so that employees can be reminded to clock in when arriving within that geofence or within that project area, as well as reminding them to clock out when they leave it. And then we also kind of as a next generation have some exciting ideas about other ways we could use that GPS or location information, maybe to help your team run more efficiently or kind of be able to see what's going on throughout the day. So, a lot of great ideas, but on the geofencing front, that's definitely something that will be available in the very near future here for your time tracking needs.
Someone had asked, and I think we answered this earlier, but just to highlight it again, can employees edit their own timesheets? The answer is no. In a lot of cases, especially when I've spoken with our clients, that's actually a concern that an employee would come in and maybe clock in for 1 minute that day and then come back and say, oh, no, I actually worked for 8 hours today. Or the more likely scenario would be they say they worked for 8 hours when they worked 4, right? So they clock in and then they clock out or something like that. But then they come back and they change their clock in and clock out times, or they adjust their break settings inside of their timestamps. Yeah, the short answer there would be no. Once the time is actually logged into the system, at that point, it is a read-only mode for that employee. A company administrator would be the only person who can actually edit those timesheets moving forward, just to make sure that there's control and that the labor requirements 2 days before your payroll hits doesn't just jump, in some type of unprecedented scale that you weren't expecting for that week.
Yeah, exactly. So it is protected, and it's also easy to do, as an administrator. So, pretty quick and easy to make those changes or updates if you do need to make a change, and that is restricted and protected. Let's see. Well, and I know we're already a few minutes over on time today, Jordan, but I'm glad we were able to jump back into some of those questions. Great questions, guys. As we wrap up, one thing just to make everyone aware of, or a reminder for all of you, that today's Lunch and Learn session will be available along with all of our other UDA webinars on our events page. So that's going to be udatechnologies.com/events. We'll go ahead and pull that up for you. So this, we are of course recording today's session. That recording will be available along with all of the other webinars that we've done recently. These are great sessions. So if you've missed any of those recently, you may want to come back and take a look. Especially at some of those Construction Online 2020, we've had a chance to really cover some outstanding improvements, not just for time tracking within the mobile app, but the mobile app overall. Look at the new advanced estimating options, some of the new additional features in Construction Online 2020, as well as some really outstanding new tools available within the Redline Plan Room. So if you haven't had a chance to check those out yet, definitely come to our events page here and take a look. But until next time, we've definitely enjoyed having you join us today, and hope today's workshop has been super useful and helpful for you guys.
Yeah, thank you again for spending your afternoon, early morning, late morning, evening, wherever you are with us today. And we hope that you'll join us as we continue to build on an incredibly strong foundation for Construction Online 2020. Thank you all again.